Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com.
You're listening to Real Estate Radio Washington, D.C. Metro with local expert Ryan Sloper. Now, here's Ryan.
Welcome back, Washington, D.C. Metro, to Ryan Sloper's Real Estate Radio, and I'm joined today by Louis Cammarosano, the General Manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, Real Estate Radio is designed to build the Washington, D.C. Metro's housing and credit markets one house at a time. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, whether it's, real estate, finance, credit, we can help you with any of those things. Reach out to us at the off-air line. It's 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030, or on the web at realestateradio.dcmetro.com. Coming up now is this week's Word on Wealth, where we kind of let you know what happened in the markets last week and, what's on deck this week. Louis, there was an article in the Associated Press that showed that consumer borrowing dropped $9.5 billion in August, where consumers slashed their borrowing by the most in the last 16 months. And it suggested that many worried about taking on any new debt while the economy was slumping, and fewer people were actually using their credit cards. I actually think that it's a definite good thing that people are not, consuming as much and saving more. Would you not agree?
That's what has to happen. You can't be in debt and then encourage more borrowing. You
Right.
have to build up your savings again and reduce your debt, and then you're in a position to make purchases smarter and to use debt smarter.
What's interesting, though, is the banks, everything is driven off consumption for them. So if you're not consuming, their numbers aren't as good. And I think that it's good that people are becoming fiscally responsible and starting to save more and paying off their debts like they should be. And I hope that this trend actually continues where the consumer borrowing is dropping. Now, that's also because of lending.
Well, it does cause short-term pain in the economy if people are not spending the money and they're saving it, but eventually it's a good thing.
Yeah, I do agree that. I mean, I think the other part of the whole consumer borrowing is the lack of lending that's out there that we discussed last week on the show, Louis, where, banks, they're in business for profit, and they're not just out there just to lend money to anybody. If it doesn't make sense to them, if they don't have collateral, if they don't have, credit scores that they want to see, they're not going to lend their money. They want to make sure that they're protected and they're pretty much all but guaranteed to get their money back.
Oh, in many cases, they were guaranteed by the government through loan programs.
Absolutely. And they also had insurances in place that, if somebody did default, that they had an insurance premium that would pay them back the difference as well. So there's a lot of different measures that they had in place to keep that, money coming to them where they really didn't have to worry about losing anything. And, going forward, it seems like, things are becoming tougher and tougher on the mortgage front to be able to obtain a mortgage. I wanted to kind of discuss, because this is like a lot of the questions we've been getting from listeners is, well, what can I do before I, apply for a home mortgage? What is it that I can do to put myself or position myself in a better way to get approved for a loan? And I'll go over a couple. The first is income documents. A lot of people know that when you apply for the loan, they're going to ask you for your last 2 years' personal tax returns, business returns too if you're self-employed. They're going to want your last 30 days worth of pay stubs. They're going to want your last 2 months worth of bank statements. So you want to be gathering all this information. One of the nitpick things that a lot of people don't really understand, when you print out your bank statements, a lot of people just print them out online. They need to have your name, your account number, and your address on the actual bank statement. And if it says page 1 of 4, you need all pages 1 of 4. They're very strict and stringent because they want to see if there's anything that's missing on page 4 that could potentially be a problem, like an overdraft. I know a lot of people say, well, I just want to show them what I want to show them, and it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So the best thing that you can do is really start preparing all these documents ahead of time to really have them all laid out, everything that you need, so that it's really not, when the loan officer asks you for them, you already have them ready to go, because going back and forth delays the actual process. Another thing is a part of the asset documents. When they're looking at your bank statements, you need to review your bank statements and make sure that if there are any large deposits. Now, what constitutes a large deposit? Typically, any deposit that would represent more than your income can support. So, like, let's say you make $5,000 a month. After taxes, you're likely probably netting around $3,700, $3,800. Therefore, any deposits that would be in excess of that will need to be explained and documented. For instance, you sold a car. You're going to actually need a paid receipt of that motor vehicle that you have. And if you received a gift, you're going to need that documented as well. So don't just assume that it's okay that money's coming into these bank statements and you've had it in there for longer than 2 months that you're not going to need to show proof, because you will. And the more proof that you have, the better off you are.
And Ryan, why is that? Why are they looking for large deposits?
The reasons they're looking for large deposits is because a lot of the times people have cash money or they borrow money from somebody, and you can have gifts that come from certain people for those type of things, but it has to be documented. And typically they like to see the last 2 months, so the money has to be seasoned for 60 days. So if a borrower has had it in their account for the last 60 days, chances are there's no funny business going on behind the scenes where, they went over to Joe and said, hey, can I borrow $10,000? I'm going to put it in my bank account to buy a house and I'm going to give it back to you.
Oh, I see. Because you're trying to, they suspect that the potential purchaser is just buttressing their bank account for purposes of showing the.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and let's say they had a bank statement from 2 months ago that had 5,000, but then in the last 30 days they all of a sudden have 20,000.
I guess they might also get it from relatives too.
And that's okay.
Well, that doesn't mean though that their financial situation is exactly as it is on their own. It's that they are getting help.
Exactly. And with an FHA loan, you're allowed to get a gift, the full down payment or whatever they need from a relative, but conventionally it's a completely different set of circumstances. So you really, and this can really mess up your loan. Like if you want to go apply for a conventional and you don't disclose up front that you just deposited $20,000 into a bank account, that would probably then eliminate you from your conventional financing. And there's caveats to that. If you're putting 20% down conventionally, a lot of the time they don't care where the money comes from. But if you're only putting 10% of it down, then you need to have at least 5% of your own money, and you can borrow the other 5%. So there's so many, what if scenarios that it's really important that you start planning ahead of time. Not like a month before you get ready to buy this house. I'm talking 3 or 4 months, because you might need to get your money in order so that your last 2 months bank statements are going to show seasoning of that money for the last 2 months. This is one of the biggest things, Lewis, that crush deals, to be honest with you, is that there's money coming from a certain place that they really can't document. And all it really does is it throws up a red flag to the underwriter. The underwriter is, of course, the person that's reviewing your loan and going to be determining if you're going to get approved or denied. So the more explanation and the more documentation and proof that you have of everything on your bank statements, the better off you are, because it shows a storyline there. And, part of my job is to be able to piece a story together and lay that out for the underwriters so they know what's going on. They don't get to pick up the phone and call you and ask you questions. Everything is pretty much in a loan application and the documentation that's supporting it and any letters that you want to give them to explain further. So they don't know you any other way than by what you're representing on your loan application. So it's very, very critical that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So before you start moving forward with your next transaction and you just assume you have 800 credit scores and you just assume that all your finances are in line, make sure that you reach out to somebody that can review these documents. It can be a deal killer. There's an article, I believe it was from the National Association of Realtors, that released that their existing sales report 2 weeks ago discussed a troubling trend, which was canceled contracts that are considered contract failures, which are largely being declined by mortgage applications or the failure in the loan underwriting from appraised values or not disclosing proper income. And that NAR explained that 18% of all contracts were canceled in August. And this compares to 16% last month and 9% in August of 2010. Lewis, that's a very troubling statistic there.
That's double. Did they give any rationale why?
But they said 2 reasons. Number one is because the person that is the loan officer or the mortgage company, bank, whoever's taking these applications, are not getting detailed information up front when they're issuing pre-approval letters.
But weren't they? Why would there be a change in that detailed information? Is it because they're now asking for more detailed information and they're not getting it, or the consumers aren't able to give it to them?
Well, I can kind of give you what I think's going on, Lewis, which is a lot of what a lot of loan officers, loan consultants do in the pre-approval process, that they don't gather all the actual documentation. They just ask the borrower kind of what they make, what's on their W-2s. The borrower may send their W-2s to them, but then they don't get the tax returns until after they have a ratified contract, and then they get their ratified contract and they learn that there's unreimbursed business expenses. Or they ask the borrower and then they find out that the borrower has money going out of their bank statements that's showing child support. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, and I've seen it happen all over the place, which is why it's really critical to sit down with, the loan consultant way ahead of time so that you can establish all those things. And the other second reason, Lewis, is for appraised values not coming in, and that can obviously be a big deal killer there. Seller wants 350, and then all of a sudden the appraisal comes in at 325, and then the seller throws up their arms and says, "Well, I'm not selling my house for 325." So then they end up just staying in their home and not settling. So that's the other big reason. But I mean, that's just it's a really high number.
It's almost 1 in 5.
Yeah, it's 1 in 5, and I mean, I think that if you're a buyer, you want to make sure that you're working with an agent that can not only find you the home of your dreams, but help you find the professional assistance with all aspects of the transaction, meaning your mortgage, your title, everything. Best place to reach that, to start out looking is HomeGain. You can, search for realtors on there. You can research them and then contact them, when you feel comfortable, kind of identify who you want to work with. And the easiest way to do that, Lewis, is what can they do? Just go to your website, correct?
Just go to homegain.com. If you're interested in working with a real estate agent or finding a real estate agent and comparing them anonymously, you click on there's 3 boxes on the homepage. You click on the one that says Find Realtors, Compare Realtors.
Perfect. When we come back, we're going to jump in short sales versus foreclosures and which one is the winner between the two. Be right back.